Hello, everyone. This is Groundwater Talk Live, and I am Tom Ballard, the Groundwater Guy. Today, we are going to discuss business process mapping, or BMP, which is an important part of business process management, including the overall process management plan I've discussed in a previous video. So, business process mapping and business process management are usually associated with private sector and more entrepreneurial type companies. But in this video, I'm going to go over how to adapt these business processes or systems to small water utilities. But first, let's talk about what business process mapping is, what its advantages are, and how it's usually deployed in an organization. Then I'll discuss how business process mapping can be adapted and used to great effect in small water utilities. So let's dive in. All right. Business process mapping is a visual representation of work processes that shows the relationship among the steps required to complete a product or a service, and it can be expressed as simple flowcharts or with more complex business process modeling and notation or BPMN symbols. In any case, it can promote transparency for those within the organization and with all stakeholders. The purpose of business process mapping is to inspire professionals to consider how to make their organization more effective by thinking through their workflows. It's often used for strategic planning, developing new metrics for reporting, and improving existing processes within the scope of business process mapping, showing end-to-end activities, inputs, and linkages. We're more concerned in this video with how business process mapping can improve day-to-day operations in our core processes that have been defined within the organization. So business process mapping is part of business process management and is concerned with business activities, purpose, standards for success, roles and responsibilities, and when and where different steps will occur. And it is distinct from business process modeling, which focuses on analyzing and optimizing the business process architecture through reviewing the processes and considering the company's goals and requirements. Business process mapping has several purposes, including process standardization, employee onboarding and training, process improvement, communication, and regulatory compliance. The focus is on core processes in the organization. Okay, so there are several types of business process maps, including flowcharts, which can be top-down, deployment, or detailed, and other diagrams like swim lane diagrams, state diagrams, data flow diagrams, and value stream mapping, each serving a specific purpose in illustrating and analyzing business processes. For our purposes, simple flowcharts are often sufficient for our needs. Core processes and getting started with mapping. Business process mapping is a crucial step in the journey of continuous improvement as it allows organizations to understand their current level of performance and identify areas for improvement, with the first step being to understand the current processes and how to measure their performance. So KPIs, or key performance indicators, are an important part of this because we need to measure what we do. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So that's going to be important, is the metrics that get attached to these. But before you can attach the metrics, you need to understand exactly what the purpose is, and that is the purpose of business process mapping. So that's where we go from here. Each organization has core processes that are essential for achieving its strategy, such as the claims processing in an insurance company, for instance, or planning and scheduling in a manufacturing company. And these processes can be a good starting point for process mapping. I like to say we're interested in mapping our core processes and not necessarily every process we do. Core processes are where you can get your biggest improvements and your increases in efficiencies. So those are the ones we want to focus on, at least to start. And then you can expand this out. But if we're going to start, we're going to start with our core processes. So we need to identify those first and then do the business process mapping for that. To map a process, it's recommended to work with a team of individuals who do the work on a daily basis, as they know how the process is really working and can identify potential issues and key questions to ask, to include what the process steps are, what function is responsible for each step, and how to measure the performance of each process. So these are the people that are involved in the process. They know what it is. No investment is needed to get started with business process mapping, as a team can begin with simple tools, even like sticky notes on a whiteboard. And once the process is determined, it can be documented in a software program or even a spreadsheet for future reference. So relatively simple, not a lot of tools needed for this, but just thinking through the whole process. All right, adapting business process mapping to small water utilities. Adapting business process mapping to small water utilities, which can often be resource constrained in terms of staff, finances, or even both, can be achieved by focusing on simplicity, leveraging existing staff, expertise, and prioritizing high impact or your core processes. When I say high impact processes, that's synonymous with your core process. So here's how we do it. We want to start with high impact processes, so apply business process mapping to the right types of processes that offer the most impact for your time. These are going to be your core processes. Focus on processes that directly affect customer service, regulatory compliance, or operational efficiencies such as billing, leak detection, and water quality management. Utilize existing staff expertise. Instead of hiring expensive external consultants, involve the staff members who perform the processes daily. They possess invaluable knowledge of the as-is state, and that's really what we're documenting to start with is what is our core process as it exists now, and then we start looking at it to see how we can improve it. So we've collected expert tips from recognizing your assumptions to using subject matter experts, and that's how that plays out. And keep it simple. When you map a process, you must diagram it out in a way that achieves a shared understanding. So everybody needs to know what's going on. You need to keep it relatively simple. So we're going to want to use basic flow charts or simple diagrams instead of the complex BPNN symbols that can really make it complex. And that works for bigger organizations that have thousands of people and that type of thing. For our purpose, even something sticky notes on a whiteboard, as I mentioned, can be a great starting point. Then you just take pictures of it or put that into a spreadsheet or document it on paper and map it out from there. But sticky notes are a great way to go because you can just shuffle them around and move things around and really do some brainstorming with this function, this process. All right, so focus on process improvement. We want to analyze the process, optimize it, and then document the process while identifying problem areas. This is the core of what we're trying to do here is get it all down on paper, and then you can start to look and see where we can improve this. The goal is to identify inefficiencies and areas for improvement, not to create a perfect map. So we're not starting off with perfect. We want to have something that we can get it down on paper to document it, then we can start looking at it, analyzing it, figure out how we can measure it, and how we can improve it over time. We want to prioritize customer-centric redesign because, after all, our customers are driving everything. They're the ones that pay the rates, and they're the ones we need to please, getting them clean, safe water. And so they're the ones that we're really looking at because we're delivering that water to them, and we need to keep them at the forefront of our thought. All right, so the customer-centric redesign processes to be customer-centric. Focus on improving the customer experience by streamlining processes like billing inquiries, service requests, or even documenting complaints, because documenting complaints can actually be, even though you hate to get complaints, it can be good because we can discern patterns there, see where we might improve things. So it's really good to look at where the complaints are coming from and start analyzing that in terms of how we can improve our processes. So that can be helpful. We want to leverage technology where feasible. So use technology to enable your processes. Explore low cost or free software options for documenting and sharing process maps. And we want to work backward from output to input. So this is an important point because we want to start with where our endpoint is, and then we want to work backwards through that so that we can then document that process. It really helps you to look at things going backwards because that helps you identify where there may be problems in the process and things like that. If you look at it from the beginning to the end, a lot of times you're used to that process and you may not identify things. But if we look at things backwards and go step back through it, then that sometimes will give us a fresh light on things and help us to identify areas for improvement. So that helps to identify the critical steps and inputs required to achieve the desired outcome, which is improved process. We want to create ownership. So creating ownership with single points of contact where feasible. So assign responsibility for each process to a specific individual to assure accountability. All right, so here is a step-by-step outline for small water utility to develop a process map based on what the provided context that we mentioned earlier. Number one, we want to identify the process map or the process to map. So focus on high impact core processes that affect customer service, regulatory compliance, or operational efficiency. Consider processes like billing, leak detection, or water quality monitoring. Determine the process steps from beginning to end, or as I mentioned, you might want to go backwards and walk through it backwards, and that gives you a fresh light on things and shows you places where you might be able to improve that process. We want to define the purpose of the map. So specifically define the purpose of mapping the process. Ask where the priority process initiates and where it ends. Determine what the opportunity of optimizing the process could become. And then what we want to do is the next step is to gather information about the current process, or as we say, the as-is process design. So where we are actually, the state of the process, and that's where we want to start is the existing process, map that out. Now we're going to identify the areas for improvement. Determine all the steps in the selected process, as well as the inputs and outputs. Establish the systems, roles, and the time involved. Interview the contributors or the people actually working on the process for the roles they play in the process, looking at every duty and decision point. Work with a team of individuals who do the work on a daily basis and ask what function is responsible for each step. All right, number 4, select a mapping technique. Use basic flowcharts or simple diagrams instead of the complex BPMN symbols and the really complex flowcharts. Sticky notes on a whiteboard, as I mentioned, is a great place to start and a pretty flexible way to do this. Number 5, analyze the process and identify problem areas. So we want to analyze the process to determine where improvements can be made, identify inefficiencies and areas for improvement. Number 6, document the process. So we want to diagram it out in a way that achieves a shared understanding of that process for everybody that's involved. The scope of business process mapping will show end-to-end activities, inputs such as materials or labor, and the linkages between those. That often is where we can make improvements. Number 7, validate the map. Review the map with the process participants to ensure it's correct. Right after you draw them, review with the process participants so that you ensure that they are correct, because those are the people that are going to know how it goes. 8, monitor the process for improvement. Continue to monitor the process for improvement over time. And number 9, review the process map on a regular basis to account for changes in technology, regulatory requirement, and other factors. Update as necessary. And I'm going to say that that should really be probably done at a quarterly or at least an annual process where you go through and you have a meeting where you look at your processes, you update them as necessary, and going through and reviewing them probably takes a little less time than actually constructing them in the first place. So that's going to be very important because you're going to continually want to be improve that as things change. And just as you make tweaks to the process, you're going to evaluate how that works. Maybe sometimes you have to go backwards or do some things a little differently. So you're going to want to constantly be evaluating, improving those things and updating those things over time and reviewing the process map and the actual process and mapping regularly. All right. So that is the basics of business process mapping for small water utilities. My focus is always on helping small water utilities do more with less, and business process mapping, along with the whole process management plan, can really help improve efficiency in the core processes of the water utilities. So this is going to be a very important process to improve efficiencies and take advantage of those improved processes because it's going to may allow your staff to do more with less, like I say, because now you're going to improve those efficiencies, maybe do things a little differently so you save time. And small water utilities, like I say, are always resource constrained, certainly in terms of staff, but usually financing. Looking at the efficiencies here can really save us both time and money. Okay, thank you very much. That is the show for today. I want to remind everybody that we have a 12-month management program for small water system of less than 3,000 connections. That's going to be our Water Masters Mastermind. We take about 6 to 8 people per mastermind, and we go through the whole management process. And I'll have a video out on this. We're going to be starting those up this year and really look at how we can improve our management. We go from everything from asset management, capital improvement plans, through knowledge retention, cybersecurity, and then the process management and KPIs and SOPs, best management practices. A lot of this stuff is what we cover here, not stuff you typically get in your normal training for your contact hours. And so that's what's important. All right. Thank you very much. And we will see you in the next show.